Social media infographics are shaping our political discourse, and young people's minds are on the chopping block. It's now trendy to despise patriotism and cancel those who think differently than us. I'm Cameron Arcand. I'm launching the Young Not Stupid interview series, powered by the Western Journal. I'll be interviewing a wide variety of guests through a conservative lens with people that will better equip you with the truth about what's happening in our country and around the globe. President Ronald Reagan once said that freedom is never more than one generation away from extinction, and we need to take that to heart. So tune in each Friday to the Young Not Stupid interview series to be prepared in the fight for the values that make America exceptional. Welcome back, everyone, to another edition of the Young Not Stupid interview series. I'm Cameron Arcand, and today's guest arguably needs no introduction, but I'll give him one anyways. He is the host of the Rubin Report and the author of Don't Burn This Book. He's a political commentator. You might see him on TV all the time. Dave Rubin. So to start us off, your background in particular I find very interesting, and we're going to kind of get into the specifics of current events in a minute here. But I wanted to start off with, you started your career at a very liberal media outlet, the Young Turks, and now you kind of have made your way into more conservative circles. You call yourself a classical liberal. So I was kind of wondering what made the change for you over time to now being a critic of the cultural left.
Sure. It's a great question. It's something that I get some version of a lot. I would say one thing first, which is, people will say, oh, the Young Turks or progressives in general, that they're liberals. I would actually argue that they're probably the most anti-liberal force that we have in America. As a matter of fact, I would say that conservatives generally are more liberal than progressives. So to unpack that a little bit and then directly answer your question, liberalism, which I wrote a whole book about, is the idea that we can believe in logic and reason and individual rights and some form of limited government, and that's the best way to govern. But not only govern, that's the best way to accomplish some level of human flourishing. So that you, Cameron, probably know the best way to live for yourself. And if we basically create a governmental system that will pretty much get out of your way, but just protect those God-given rights that we have here in the United States, then you're good to go. That is very different from progressivism, which is, my former network, the Young Turks, or really the progressive wing of the Democratic Party, which in many respects has completely taken over the Democratic Party at this point. The AOC, Ilhan Omar squad version of this, where government is supposed to do absolutely everything, that there somehow should be this power structure above us. We create it, and then it exists above us, and somehow it will know what to do for our lives. It's just sort of a crazy premise. It's, by the way, why every time that socialism or communism or Marxism have been ushered into societies, just look at history in the last 100 years alone, it's why an awful lot of people have to get killed, because they think that they can just give this system enough power to teach us what's good, except the problem is that humans are flawed, and then automatically we're going to create flawed systems. So there were several things that kind of woke me up to that. I would say the key one that fortunately or unfortunately, to some degree, millions and millions of people have seen, is when I sat down with Larry Elder, and I was still on the left. I considered myself a lefty and a liberal. And Larry Elder, who of course is a conservative radio host here in Los Angeles, really what he describes himself as a small L libertarian. And we started talking about a bunch of things, including systemic racism. Larry happens to be black. I don't think that matters that much, other than it's an interesting facet of this story. And I said, well, systemic racism exists. And Larry basically beat me over the head with facts. And that moment, which, as I said, has now been seen millions and millions of times on YouTube, was a pivotal moment for me, because I heard someone with more information than I had. And I started changing because of that. And I would say in the 5 years or so since then, I've really tried to go where I think the facts lead. I've tried to go down that road consistently and honestly. And when I see some people that maybe I thought were my opponents years ago, Ben Shapiro, Larry Elder, Dennis Prager, Glenn Beck, these scary conservatives, I found them to be open and warm and honest and friendly. And that's very different from what I've seen on the left. So that's just one of a couple moments that kind of woke me up to this whole situation.
Yeah, and just kind of going into our next point here is the left and progressives in particular have really kind of taken over every single institution that we value or know to be valuable in American culture, one of them being the entertainment industry. And this has been something that arguably has become increasingly relevant in recent years, especially when Trump was president, and they were using every single moment possible to criticize the president. Award shows, people eventually stopped watching those because they got tired of constant leftist messaging happening. But even today, when we have a Democratic president and arguably people in charge with a more left-leaning worldview, this kind of wokeism has still infiltrated, and it's still causing people to constantly call out one another. We're seeing that right now with all the controversy surrounding the whole Dave Chappelle special on Netflix. And kind of basing off that, I was wondering if you could kind of just give your thoughts on what the future of the entertainment industry is going to look like. Will conservatives kind of build up their own institutions to combat this? Or is it really something where there's really no place left for anyone who's right of center to view any material or even work in the entertainment industry without feeling isolated?
Yeah, so I should tell you, I am in Los Angeles. I still live in this crazy city. So I'm in the belly of the beast, pretty much right outside of Hollywood. And this whole city has collapsed. I mean, it really has collapsed. There's nothing good coming out of Hollywood right now. There's very few movies coming out. There's very few new television series. And even when they do, no one's really watching them anymore. Yeah, we've all got our favorite Netflix show or what we're watching on Hulu, but it's not like the old days of Hollywood, or even, I'm not that old on a show called Young Not Stupid. I'm not that old. I'm 45. But, when I was, roughly your age, 20 years ago or so, there were tons of sitcoms on, and you could channel surf and find all kinds of fun stuff. Well, now you do that online because the machine, the Hollywood machine, is basically just pumping out woke crap. I will give some hope here, which is that, the Dave Chappelle special, which was, I watched it was pretty solid, although he had to spend an awful lot of time explaining his jokes and sort of pre-apologizing. He did a great job of it. I don't know that there's another way that he could have done it, but that just sort of tells you the state of wokeism and the state of cancel culture, that you've got really our best modern comedian spending half his special trying to explain to people why they shouldn't be offended about something that he's about to say. You know what I mean? It wasn't that he was explaining it after the joke. He was basically like doing a preface to the jokes. That being said, Netflix did put the special on. I guess a couple trans employees were protesting, and Netflix said, basically, we're not endorsing your protest. So there's a little bit of hope there. But I think really the way you asked the question was the right way, which is, do we have to build new things? And the answer is yes. Any of us that are not woke, whatever that means to you, it doesn't matter if you're a card-carrying conservative or you're more libertarian, you're an old school liberal, you're apolitical altogether, you don't care about politics. We must build new things. Between big tech and Netflix and Hollywood and you said all of the institutions, you're right, our educational institutions are crumbling, everything's kind of crumbling. So there's huge opportunity here. I know a lot of this can feel kind of depressing, and I think especially, for young people, it must feel very weird, I suppose, to be, late teens, early 20s and feeling like the whole world is kind of falling apart. But in another way, if you changed your thinking a little bit, it's actually kind of cool. I'm not saying it's not scary and there isn't all sorts of stuff to be worried about, but there's huge opportunity. The opportunity that how old are you, Cameron?
18.
You're 18. I mean, that's pretty awesome. The opportunity that is facing you for the next 50 years of your life, in some ways, is way greater than the opportunity that was facing me. And I guess I've done okay, right? I think I've done all right. People seem to like what I do. But the point is, when I was 18, it felt like the world was kind of settled. Like it made sense. Oh, you're 18, you're going to go to college, you're going to get a job, it's going to all sort of work. Well, for you, even though that feels kind of upside down right now, and it's like, does any of this make sense? And is there a point of going to college and all that? It's like that craziness is fertile ground for you to figure out what you want to do in your life. You're doing it with this show. I assume that your audience, it's like all of these young people that are kind of like, oh, maybe the old structures don't really make sense. Maybe I don't have to go $100,000 into debt to get a lesbian dance theory degree. Like maybe there's some other ways to do this. And that actually is very cool. So that's kind of the white pill version of all of this.
Yeah, kind of adding on to that, in addition to doing this show here, I'm a student over at Arizona State University, and we've had our fair share of incidents over the past
Yep.
couple of weeks. Two conservative students getting harassed in one of our multicultural spaces. I don't know whatever they're calling them now. And then Kristen Sinema getting chased into a bathroom just a few feet from where I sleep at night. So that's very comforting to know that kind of stuff is happening on my college campus. But kind of building off that point, what do you see happening for conservative students in colleges? How do we, or even just kind of in education in general, we're seeing a lot of parents finally start to fight back against a lot of the left-leaning education system. How should conservatives, whether they're students or parents, or even professors who are conservative and are kind of stuck in this, how do we actually effectively combat this before we arguably already have lost another institution?
Yeah, that's the key part of this thing, right? It's like, can you fight from the inside? You now as a student, or if your parents got involved, or whatever few academics remain or administrators remain, is there enough juice? Is there enough machinery? Are there enough brave people to kind of piece together something that will push back on the wokeism? I don't know that there is. I mean, it's probably undoubtedly different at every college. So Arizona State has a version of it. It's probably not quite as bad there as, say, at Harvard or at Yale. You know, the Ivy League colleges have really gone all in on wokeism, which sort of tells you something about a very sad point for me, which is the weakness of liberalism, is that the places that purported to be the most liberal and care about ideas the most, they're the ones that fell the easiest, where now more conservative-leaning colleges are actually the ones that are still standing up to some of this nonsense. I would say for you and for anyone your age, it's kind of like you have to really think about it. It's like, is it worth paying X amount of dollars to learn from these teachers in these disciplines if A, I'm either not really learning anything, or I'm being brainwashed, or the things that they're talking about are not in line with my life? And again, it kind of gets to what we were talking about a few minutes ago about the opportunity that you have at 18. When I was 18, we didn't have YouTube. It's like you can turn on YouTube right now and you can have you can listen to an absolutely life-changing lecture on personal responsibility by Jordan Peterson. Not one, but hundreds of them. You could listen to all sorts of scientists talk about biology and chemistry. You could listen to mathematicians talk, historians. It's all out there. So it's like, if you really are, 17, 18 years old, you're trying to figure out if you're going to go to college or what you're going to do, like, you should really think about it. If your parents are like, we've got 20 grand, let's say, to help you on this next step of your life, it's like, you might want to say, you know what, instead of putting that 20 grand to college, I'm going to save that. That'll maybe go for my first car payment or down payment on a house or something like that. And I'm going to learn other ways. That being said, I had a great time at college. There's all sorts of reasons socially why you should, you live with your parents as a kid, and then you have like a couple years at college before you live on your own or you're married or whatever else. There's something about the socialization part that's important. But that doesn't mean you have to go to Syracuse and pay 70 grand a year to walk out with some useless degree and then, basically spend the rest of your life paying for it.
Yeah, you're exactly right with that. What's so interesting is Arizona State's currently dealing with this crisis where the student body itself isn't exactly super left-leaning. In fact, a lot of it's pretty split even between conservatives and liberals. We have all of our "Let's Go Brandon" chants going on at every single college football game that's been happening these past few weeks. So it's definitely interesting to kind of see that dichotomy between the student body and the faculty, and how that's playing out at a university that's of such a large public university where there's just so many views taking place. But leading into my last point is, I used to live in California. I lived in Orange County for most of my life. My family moved to Tennessee this past summer, and I live here in Arizona now. And my last question for you is, you've mentioned in some previous interviews that after the recall election didn't go through, that you were considering leaving the state of California. Where kind of is your head on that, and just kind of your thoughts on this idea between people staying and fighting in the state to make some political changes, or should people just leave now?
Yeah, so I'll do the latter part first about do you make which choice, which road do you go down? Is the stay and fight or get out? Then I'll talk about my personal thoughts on it. You know, as a general rule, if we're to believe that the United States of America, the idea of this great country that had these states that could mostly govern themselves, but that we were part of something called the United States, key word being united, that we were going to be part of something bigger than us, but mostly leave our lives to the states. What a wonderful system the Federalist system is that our founders came up with. If we're to believe that that thing still works at any level, then we need a plurality of political opinion and true diversity of thought to exist in all of the states. You don't really want it to be that it will only be Democrats that live in California. It'll only be Republicans that live in Florida, because ultimately what would happen if we really went that route, like truly went that route, is we would end up in perpetual war with each other. The United States would be in a nonstop civil war. Now, the irony of that, I've been talking about this a lot on my show, is that the red state people would basically be saying, hey, we don't want anything to do with you guys. We don't want all your silly policies. We don't want all your tax stuff and government overreach and all that. The blue people, though, would not let it be, because the blue people, generally speaking, they want that governmental power, right? So they would be going, whoa, 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 red states, you guys seem to be flourishing over there. You have low taxes and people are working and you're building things and there's products on the shelves and all that. We want some of that. So that would cause basically an untenable tension that I don't know what we would end up doing. I mean, I think it would be basically a low-grade civil war forever. It would be pretty terrible, and obviously nobody wants that. That being said, so I want people to be able to be mixed in states, but also at some point, you know, the rubber does meet the road. And as far as the stay and fight thing versus just cut and run, look, as you know, the guys from the Daily Wire, they were here in LA, they left, they went to Tennessee, they're loving it in Tennessee. I have a lot of other friends that are, you know, roughly in this business that have left, and I have personal friends that have left. You know, when the recall happened, I said, I'm going to stay and fight. And I really did fight as hard as I could. And I thought that Larry Elder was a spectacular, not only a great candidate, but a good, decent man. And he was treated horribly by the machine. Joe Biden campaigning for Newsom, refusing to say Larry Elder's name, and then basically calling him a Trump clone. Larry Elder, who grew up in South Central LA, son of a janitor. I mean, just extraordinary stuff, like if you want to know who the real racists are. So I saw how corrupt the machine is. So it's hard for me at the moment to kind of see that star, that glimmer in the distance for California, because it's like, man, you guys, the recall did not go well. It was 70-30 if we're to believe it was legit. So there isn't much of a star here. So I would say I'm sort of short on California, but I'm long on America. I believe that human ingenuity and the desire for freedom in our history is so powerful. And I believe that humans yearn to be free. It's something that's not even taught to us. I think it's innately part of being human. So I believe that America will basically be okay over time, but some of the states may just fail. So to officially answer the first part of your question, the truth is, as my team knows, you know, I'm trying to figure out what to do. I don't like the idea, just on a personal note, I don't like the idea of cut and run. I really don't. I didn't realize I was a fighter, but I like fighting. But, you know, at some point, you know, you don't want to fight your whole life too. And, you know, if there's a place that's more in line with your beliefs, then I would say it's a personal decision for everybody.
All right. Well, thank you so much. I think you brought up some great points there about kind of this whole red state versus blue state situation that we're dealing with right now, of people move into places that might align better with them. But thank you so much again. If you guys are interested in seeing more content like this, be sure to like and subscribe to the Western Journal YouTube channel. And if you would like to see more content from us as well, head on over to westernjournal.com. This is Cameron Arcan signing off.